Okay, so we've already...
You got a crumb right here on your...
It's a fuzz, not a crumb.
You got a fuzz.
I could see why you would think it's a crumb, because normally it's a crumb. It's a cat hair, it's a crumb, it's a stain, it's a drip. I'll be honest, I wore these pants yesterday. Flour all over them.
There's gonna get more flour on it today.
Yeah. Welcome to Home Movies, Sweet Enough Edition, episode 4. In this episode, we're talking about the people that helped make this book possible. And while it truly takes a village, and there are dozens more people who had a hand in making this possible, I wanted to sort of get in front of the camera from their own experiences, a few key players, if you will.
Yeah, I remember this. This dish is so good. Let me walk you through a day of being in an Alison Roman photo shoot. It's like she shows up exactly when she says she's gonna show up. She's obviously had a ginormous kitchen disaster at whatever place she was baking, so she's frazzled. She's like all kinds of, like everything is falling apart. And I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. I'm blissed out at the beach, so I personally am having a great time. Always fun for the models. Unclear how it is for Alison.
And then in terms of photography, I really wanted to work with somebody who had never done a cookbook before. I have a friend, Chris Bernabeo, who I know through other friends, and he's an incredibly talented fashion photographer, and he has like a beautiful understanding of like bodies and face and expression and light.
On the way to the North Fork, which was their first shoot, on my phone I had opened, it was like how to shoot food, like an actual Google search, being like, holy shit, how the fuck am I gonna do this? Oh, can I swear?
Yeah.
Okay. It just took that first shot. It all like washed away and we were on track. I mean, the cover was the second shot we did.
Was it the second?
It was the second shot, yeah.
Wow.
I'm Britt Cobb. I'm a graphic designer and I designed the book. Never designed a cookbook before, but I was interested in those moments where we could really break it up. And it really might even feel like a cookbook. It might be something that you, lay in bed at night and read instead of cooking. Maybe it's fun to read the book and your friends walk by and just want to flip through it. Oh, it's actually a cookbook. That's quite fun.
What are some of your favorite rules that you broke that you didn't know you were
I didn't know this was a rule, but supposedly copyrights, as you see on the right-hand page here, usually appear over on this page. So like people had to run that by their legal counsel and see if that was okay. And fortunately, we won that battle. Design prevailed.
I asked you, I said, what was your favorite dessert of the book or favorite moment?
Yeah.
And then you gave me a few and I was like, well, we can't do that because we already shot that.
It was like, which dessert is like camera ready, Yeah.
You're like, what do you want me to say? But I do think we landed on a really good one, whether I fed it to you or not.
This is the old-fashioned strawberry donut cake.
Oh my God, the hottest spread in the whole book. This is my friend Eben, who is the kindest, loveliest, and hottest man. And also just wears like the best swim trunks. Every summer, I feel like he does it kind of as a troll.
Someone had mentioned that like he was wearing these printed like short shorts. And I think that's just like, we both kind of were like, okay, we're definitely gonna try to get that used in some capacity. I was like, oh, okay, this is my food picture. Like this is how I wanna take food photography.
This cake is like the perfect cake for like a juicy berry summer fruit. It is fluffy, it kind of tastes like an old-fashioned donut, hence the name old-fashioned strawberry cake. But I think just like the general combination of the amount of fruit that goes into this cake, the leavening, which causes it to be like really puffy and sort of ethereal and crunchy on the outside. There's buttermilk, there's light brown sugar, which to me gives you like a tangier cake. It almost has like a yellow cake texture, but much fluffier. If you have blueberries, if you have blackberries, it would work with figs, it would work with peaches. To me, it's really tough to beat the like texture that a strawberry gets because on the inside, it gets really nice and jammy. And on the top, they kind of dry out almost like a little fruit leather. Other fruits don't perform the same way. They'll be delicious, but you'll get a different result. So for me, I lead with strawberry because that's what I would do. That's like the default. And you'll notice that happening a lot in this book. There's like almond cake with figs. There's raspberry ricotta cake. There's different fruit options for all these cakes, but the one that I lead with is me saying, I think this is the best fruit for the job.
You really sold me with the fruit leather on the outside, jam on the inside.
Listen, no one sells a cake like me, baby. But also, I'm such a people pleaser that I can't lie. If this cake was mediocre, I wouldn't know how to be like, this cake is amazing, you're gonna love it. Like, I think this cake fucking rules. Like, I couldn't fake it if I didn't. We interrupt this episode of Home Movies to bring you a word from one of my favorite sponsors, FreshDirect. FreshDirect, what else is there to say that I haven't already said? I live and breathe you. I depend on you.
I love you. I use you. You are my most used app. I love to visit your website. Everything you see, pretty much, in our home movies has been purchased through FreshDirect because they offer things that I wouldn't have even thought to purchase. Things that are local from farms, in season now, specialty items, different sort of like condiments. It is a frequent presence in my life. Sadly, FreshDirect only offered in the tri-state area. Don't be sad. Or move to New York, it's great. It's been waiting for you. And if you, like me, cannot get enough of FreshDirect, you can use the code ROMAN25 at checkout to receive $25 off your order of $75 or more. And hopefully you're dying to make this strawberry cake. You can go to that link below in the description of the video and it will take you where you need to go to buy those groceries to make that cake, to make yourself so very happy. I love to do the dramatic reading. We can cut it, but I like it. Sorry. As you may have noticed, there's no deep frying in this book. Not because I don't enjoy the occasional donut, cruller, churro, or other deep fried delight, but because, no, I will not be doing that. I will not heat up a large pot of oil and drop in the batter and fry, hoping I have not undercooked the insides or overly fried the outsides and then have to deal with all that hot oil. Even typing that feels exhausting. But the taste of a cake donut haunts me. Its vaguely vanilla flavor, deeply golden texture, crumbly yet compact interior is hard to get without a fryer. Yet somehow this cake comes extremely close.
She's ready for a book tour, folks.
All right, let's get to baking. You need a mixer for this cake. You can use an electric hand mixer. There are many of you who have no stand mixer, no electric mixer, and feel very determined to cream butter and sugar by hand. I support you, I salute you, you have my blessing. I will say that it is very hard to get the fluffiness for this cake without the power of a machine. You know me, I don't like to ask you to buy anything you won't use repeatedly. I've had this KitchenAid for many, many years. It cost me, I think, $250. It looks really nice. I keep it underneath my counter. Worth every penny. I have more bowls than any person should own, and that's because when I can't sleep, I scour the internet for like interesting bowls. I have like many tiny bowls. I have decorative bowls, metal bowls. I've got clear plastic bowls. I've got glass bowls. Don't need them. They don't need to come into this house, but I'm like, oh, this one is an old vintage Pyrex that has a cool handle. Had to have it. And guess what? Because I had to have it, I had to buy the set. Maybe one day I'll have a sale like Jen Didion and auction off all of my things and somebody will pay $8,000 for my old Pyrex measuring
One day when
bowls.
you're dead?
Yeah, when I'm dead.
Okay.
All right, 2 cups of flour, all purpose. If you used cake flour, that would be nice, but all of these recipes are designed to be made with all purpose flour and they still turn out beautifully. This, like all of the recipes, should be considered like a pantry sort of staple cake. It's like one of those nice things that if you have that really well-stocked pantry and you go to the farmer's market and you're like, oh, all these gorgeous strawberries are just begging to be baked into a cake. Well, guess what? You can do that. Even though I know this is my baking powder jar, I still always check. And then 3/4 of a teaspoon of kosher salt. I just sort of guesstimate and do a teaspoon with less in it. All right, so these are our dry ingredients. You don't need to whisk it or anything. I'm just gonna use the spoon and mix it together. The goal is just to make sure that basically the salt and the baking powder are evenly distributed in the flour. So 1 stick of butter, 4 ounces. There's no need to put this in a separate bowl or messy. It just can go straight into the mixer or whatever bowl you're mixing in. It is softened at room temperature. I've done it cold out of the fridge. You just have to kind of mix it a little bit longer. If I know that I'm baking the next day, I'll kind of just like put a container on the counter and just like trust that I'm gonna use some of this butter and I'll just put it back in the fridge if I don't use it. This cake has both light brown and dark brown sugar. Anytime I'm after like a deeper, richer flavor, which for this cake I am, because when you fry a donut, you get a lot of caramelization on the outside and toasting of the flour. And this is obviously a cake and it doesn't have that same sort of browning surface area, but we do want to make sure that the inside sort of has that more nuanced flavor. So adding something like brown sugar in addition to regular granulated sugar is going to help you achieve a bit more flavor. And again, these don't need a separate mixing bowl. These can just go straight into your mixer. And then 1/3 cup of brown sugar. This is not going to be enough. Maybe it will be. Will it be just enough? Oh my gosh, it might be. Oh my gosh, Drive. Wow, I did not plan that.
What are we, a cooking show?
This has 2/3 of a cup of sugar total for the cake, and that's not very much sugar in a cake recipe. But it does get sort of showered in this top crunch of this turbinado or demerara sugar, which again is not just for the crunchy, beautiful texture, the shiny, craggly bits, but it contributes to the overall sweetness of the cake. If you don't have this sugar and you make this cake as is, you might be like, oh, I wish it were a little sweeter. It's gonna get a little vanilla extract, a teaspoon? Yeah, 1 teaspoon. I'm gonna measure 3/4 of a cup of buttermilk and 2 large eggs. And those I'll beat together. So I'll measure my buttermilk into this first, and then crack my eggs into that, beat it, and that will be sort of my liquid for this cake. I can't believe that was like just the right amount of sugar. That's very special for me.
We interrupt this episode of Home Movies to do something that we don't do very often. I made a mistake. I was supposed to add the eggs separately. It happens to the best of us. It's why you read the recipe from start to finish before you start baking, which I didn't do. I didn't follow my own instructions. I was supposed to add the eggs to the butter and the sugar one at a time to allow them to sort of like beat and get fluffy in the cake batter. And what that does is it creates like an actual lighter, fluffier cake texture. When I cut into the finished cake, I was like, it's a little denser than usual. While edible and still very delicious, it wasn't as good as it is when you add the eggs one at a time. So in this bowl, we have our butter, our sugar, our vanilla extract. And I've scraped down the sides of the bowl. So we're gonna take our 2 eggs. The reason we add our eggs one at a time is because if your butter's not all the way soft, which mine wasn't, you'll see like the mixture looks a little grainy and separated. So you scrape down the sides. It's not unlike making an aioli or some sort of other emulsion where like if you were to add all the oil to once at the egg and try and whisk it, it would just be like a soupy mess. Add it, mix it, scrape down the sides. So I'm gonna keep mixing this until this looks completely smooth before I add the second egg. See how now it looks almost like frosting? It's like smooth and together. I'm gonna add the other egg, and I'm gonna keep mixing. If you're impatient like I am, scrape down the sides of the bowl rather than just sort of like let the paddle touch what it can. It's getting there. It's still a little grainy, but just keep mixing. Okay, and now is when you add the flour and the buttermilk. One at a time, starting with your dries. Adding 1/3 of the flour mixture, half of the buttermilk, third of the flour, another half of the buttermilk, and then the other 1/3 of your flour. And there we have a very delicious looking, very fluffy cake batter. Now back to our regularly scheduled cake programming.
So now it's like light, fluffy. It almost looks like frosting or shaving cream, or the texture is light. It's airy. A lot of this aeration is gonna translate to the end product of the cake, which again is why I say it's important to use a mixer like this. It'll be very hard to achieve this texture by hand. A lot of strawberries come in 10-ounce packages. It's sort of an approximation. A little over won't hurt, a little under won't hurt, although you might miss the fruit, but you know, you're sort of aiming for that. A little over a ½ pound of strawberries. My favorite thing to do is to like pull the stem out of the way, and then I get as close to it as possible and I trim it off. And depending on the quality of your strawberries, you might be getting more or less, but even if the white part is, you know, deeper than you'd like, it's still edible and usable, especially in a cake like this. I say include it. I worked for a chef once who was like, saw me cutting strawberries, and it was like, I was cutting too much of the strawberry off, and he screamed at me because I was wasting the strawberry, even though it was like a white straw and whatever. I was like, okay. But guess what? I don't waste strawberries anymore. What? He's right.
Yeah, just kind of, the moral is like toxic work environments are okay. It's like,
No, I had a really good experience in a restaurant. It was really hard and I cried a lot. But I think like anything, when handled poorly or under the wrong leadership, things become toxic and like irrationally militant. And I think at its best, it can be like a highly functioning, everybody helps, everybody tries, everybody's in it for each other. For this cake, I like to cut them in little discs. I think that they break down into the cake better. I think that they look really nice scattered over the top in little rounds. If you want to quarter them or chop them, you could do that if your strawberries are really large, but I'm just cutting them into, you know, 1/4 inch-ish slices. I can stop talking if you want to get this.
no, I think we have plenty of strawberries.
Are you sure? What about this strawberry? I've baked this in a pie plate and it works. And I think if your tart pan had high enough sides, it would work there too. For cakes, especially like this one that has a really nice crunchy crust, I like to do sort of a oversized parchment, and I like to leave it really rustic like that. Like I just shoved it in and I'm not gonna fuss with it anymore. And as I add the cake batter, it's gonna smooth out some of the wrinkles, but it's gonna really allow itself to have these like interesting nooks and crannies and ridges at the edge. And that doesn't work for every cake. I wouldn't do this for like if I were making a birthday cake and I wanted clean sides. I think most people sort of overmix their cake batter because they're looking for something that feels super smooth, super silky, super this. But this cake batter shouldn't be overmixed. No cake batter should. That's when you get a tough cake. Do you want like a soft, tender cake? When done right, you can rip it apart with your hands, which is exactly the point. You're just mixing it until it's combined. You know, there's a few little floury spots, but I'll get those with the spatula because don't forget, we're gonna fold in our fruit. So it's gonna get even more mixed. So you're just kind of like, when you think about cooking pasta till al dente, because you're gonna finish cooking the pasta in your sauce, think about that with your batter. I'm gonna add in about half the strawberries into the batter and then use the rest to scatter over top. And this just gets like a once or twice, and that's it. You're just kind of doing it enough to cover. Another thing left over from my restaurant days, really scrape every inch of batter from a bowl. And then just kind of smooth the top to the best of your ability. It's a pretty thick batter. We're gonna scatter the rest of the strawberries over the top. You could do this in a pattern if that's the kind of person you are, but it's not the kind of person I am. Some of these will sink into the batter further, so it looks like a lot at first on top, but they will self-correct. And some will stay on top, some will sink in further. And then we're gonna take some of this turbinado or demerara sugar and sprinkle it over the top. Maybe I do a little bit more, but 3 to 4 tablespoons. That's right, 3 tablespoons. And this is gonna go into a 350-degree oven for 45 to 50 minutes. I'm baking mine on the middle rack. I'd say mine's like upper middle, but you know, maybe I'll move it actually. All right, that's a true middle. Just to practice what I preach. Our cake came out of the oven. We've been letting it cool for a while. It looks beautiful and it looks like the book. And hopefully that's the result that you get. Another reason I like to line my cake with parchment in this way is because it becomes very easy to just lift out. This is the first time I'm doing this. It looks nice, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What a nice floofy little cake. You could do this any way you want, but it tastes really good. These strawberries were not good at all because it's the middle of January. That said, this cake still tastes great. And I think that's like a nice testament to the power of baking. A very simple, delicious snacking cake. The top is my favorite part. It has all those fruits and like the layer of sugar. I'm glad Chris picked this cake for us to make for this specific video. I feel like beautiful photo, really fun story, very good all-purpose treat. Hopefully you'll make it all summer long and like adjust it with whatever fruits you have on hand and kind of decide to make it your own. See you next time.
Like and subscribe.
Pre-order now.
Pre-order now.
Variety was a big thing with this book. Rhythm, change of pace, type isn't always the same size. Sometimes it's tiny, sometimes it's big. Sometimes the image is really crop tight, and sometimes it's just like a tiny little set of images. Look at this. We went across the gutter too. We weren't even playing around. It was a lot of control, but then a lot of just like letting loose, which is baking in some ways too.
Wow, that is actually exactly what the book is about.